I'm I'm the privileged one here to have met Prash, and Ram introduced us, and I've had such a great delight. Rather than read his pedigree and his bio, which you all can do on the Coacharya website, and go surf him because you're going to find some cool stuff out on Google. And my experience of who he is a soul that has been here forever on the planet, and he has an incredible capacity both in his beingness and in his art and in his language to transcend time. In fact, we've been in this very wonderful conversation about timelessness and the way in which the opportunity exists for each of us to be together in a way that enlivens all of time to this moment. And I'm laying this out as a theme for us because, of course, the subject of today is presence, coaching presence. How do we prepare ourselves to be fully merged and immersed, and at the same time fulfill our responsibility of holding the container or the environment for someone to deeply reflect and identify what's moving in them, that by expression allows an opportunity for transformation to occur. So this is what he does every day, every moment. And what better teacher for us to bring in and have the experience of how you see the world, Prash, and the contribution you make to our evolution of human society. So there you go. Welcome.
Wow, thank you, Janet, for a very kind introduction. Hello, everyone. No, it's lovely to be here. And be part of Coacharya. And it seems like I was involved right from its nascent stages. But it's lovely to see, a kind of a different audience and to partake with a different audience altogether. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Ram was wondering if you might even speak a little bit about the translation that occurs. You have some experience of him and his team that led to the emergence of the logo, and yes, even that design action, right? It is something most people will say, I can't draw a line, therefore I'm not an artist, therefore I'm not creative. It's like one limiting belief after another. And there's a lot that you understand about how to allow that flow to occur. Would you speak to that, please?
Sure. I really subscribe to the fact that everyone's an artist. The fact is many indigenous cultures do not have a word for art because it's the way you cook, it's the way you eat, it's the way you dress, it's how you walk, it's how you dance, it's how you decorate your homes. It's a way of life. And I really feel like art is a way of life. It's not just drawing a line or putting a brushstroke on a canvas. It's how you move, and so I feel like that was a part of my life since a very early age. And definitely, Ram was integral around the age of 14. I think he taught me, because his son Pranav and I were very good friends, and Ram taught me some meditation techniques at an early age, maybe when I was 14, that made a huge impact on my life. And of course, it's evolved and translated into various other ways, but that somehow has seeped into, this was before I even went to design school. Yeah. And through that, various people had been asking me to design logos and things like that for their school or companies. Even before I would consider myself a designer or an artist, but I would just feel what it was. And with Coacharya, having a conversation with Ram initially when it was just the beginnings, he was talking about, an aspect also of the meetings of East and West and kind of psychoanalysis and things of Eastern philosophies and the merging of these kinds of things which lead to coaching or the Guru Shishya Parampara, the relationship between a teacher and the student in India. And so what came to my mind, I very often just kind of think about it and meditate. And what came to me was a Zen, the circle, the great big circle of life. and the infinity symbol, which is eternity and forever. And once I placed the circle and the infinity, it seemed like it was a guru or a meditating person, or it had the essence of what Coacharya was. And so I immediately kind of put that down and sent it off. And that was kind of the underlying philosophy of how the logo came about. And it was just a blast of kind of, how the even just the physical attributes of the logo fell into place. So yeah, this is just the beginning.
So as I'm watching you, I want to call a few things forward for our listeners and viewers, and notice the way, Prash, that you speak with your hands, which ties back to your first response to what I said, which was that art is living, it's in movement, it's in motion, and there's a fluidity to the way in which you both engage. And people will say, I sat in meditation today. Right. So, and I allowed myself to merge into the silence. You actually allow yourself to merge into the flow, right? So whether you call it chi or whatever's one's practice is, that you're in motion, and you're, this might be
and cooking and dancing, and all of these can be part of meditation. I mean, as much as, I've been keeping a sketchbook from for about 30 years now, which kind of chronicles my life. And I've realized my sketchbook is meditation too, keeping a sketchbook. Yes. As much as it's healing, as much as it's been a pain chronicler, as much as it's been a dream journal, I realized that just the act of keeping a journal has also been such a meditative activity. And I can definitely look back at 30 years. I started keeping a diary at the age of 12 after reading the diaries of Anne Frank. And I was just moved to write. And it was, I look back at these diaries and they're hilarious. They're like literally dear diaries, and they're so repetitive in what I did every day. But I'm very grateful for having done that at 12 to 18, and then once I went to design school, it moved into a visual journal. Right. So I kind of juxtapose image and text. They're asking if I can get closer to the microphone. Can you hear me? I hope this is better. Yeah,
that does sound a little bit louder. Yeah. Okay. You're saying two more things that are worthy of call out. One is lots of people get very stuck that meditation is a quiet, silent thing. And you're really bringing forward to me that the essence of meditation is the connection with the life force. And there are so many ways to do that. It's like, will we turn off this highly rational analytic capacity our brain has and allow ourselves to be fully embodied in the life force and see what it has to teach us? And you've allowed that expression in all kinds of ways, and you can see the vitality it brings in you.
It is ever evolving, I feel like, for me, I can only talk about, because by practicing whatever it is, even if you want to sit at a place and breathe or draw or cook or dance, whatever, I think the act of doing it and the more you do it, lets it automatically evolve into, and then you realize, wow, yeah, it is doing something for me while I cook or draw or eat or sit and breathe, but being aware of it really helps. But I love the fact that it's always evolving, and understanding that it's not just this particular way that works, it's constantly growing.
So how do you trust what emerges for you and allow it to be expressed, right? There's a discerning that you possess. And at some point you make a choice that something is the beauty you're wanting to bring forward. What do you know about that internal choosing process?
I think, Janet, I've also questioned whether this is actually working, because I think that's very important too, because I felt like I got into consciously meditating, a ritual of meditating morning and night, I'd say 2012, like I kind of consciously started keeping that. And then after 8 years, something happened. My right knee gave way. I have issues with my bones, and which is why I spent 6 months in India in the winter and 6 months in Canada in the summer. And I remember having another arthroscopy on this is the second knee, and I was just like questioning everything. And I was like, you know what? And I remember being in Goa, and I questioned, like, I have a kind of a routine that I do in the morning, whereas at night it's way more of an exploration. And I remember just saying, you know what? My sketchbook said return to nothingness. I was just exploring, clean slate, tabula rasa, just clean the slate because I was like, what if I'm forcing myself to believe that this is actually working when, just because I've gotten to this comfort zone of doing a particular thing. And by taking that clean slate, by returning to nothingness, it made me realize that, wow, no, after 8 years, and this was a while ago, it has made me a more hopeful person, a more peaceful person, because I was terribly angst-ridden and a mess. I may have had a peaceful countenance. My name means peace, but I was a mess inside when I was, in my college days and even after that. And then, so it had made me definitely more peaceful and in the process, a happier person. I could feel that. And I truly believe that it is a practice, much like drawing is or cooking is or gardening or whatever. I feel like meditation is also, the practice of happiness or the practice of peace, because when I'm feeling terrible, I have to remind myself and say, smile and see what happens. And that is a practice to remind myself, like practice to smile. And invariably, once I do that, the entire energy changes, right? And so by focusing on that practice, I realized, wow, it has been so beneficial for 8 years.
Okay, so here's another tip for our listeners. It's not what you practice, it's that you practice.
Yes.
And that you also do it in a very conscientious way. So it's not that you have a ritualistic practice of meditating morning and night. It's that you're allowing yourself to actually be present in it. Rather than it being a habit, it becomes something that you bring fresh each day. Yeah. Same thing in coaching, right? It can be, coaches will say to me, I'm kind of getting bored with my clients. I'm like, no, you're getting bored with yourself. When have you stopped being available to the wonder that's in front of you in any given moment?
Yes, keep the channel open. I really feel, you have to excuse me because I've had a bad throat for a while. So I'm sipping my ginger honey thing occasionally. But I feel like keeping the channel open. I don't know if when we were talking the last time, I love this letter that Martha Graham wrote to her friend Agnes de Mille. I have it here, but it's just such I could read it to everyone. I don't know if should I go ahead?
Yes, go ahead.
Beautiful letter. It says, there is a vitality, a life force, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable it is, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. You do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep open and aware directly to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open. No artist is pleased. There is no satisfaction whatever at any time. There is only a queer, divine dissatisfaction, a blessed unrest that keeps us marching and makes us more alive than the others. I love this letter. It's such a beautiful thing because it's, the fact is we're all unique individuals. And it's no use comparing, with others because we're so unique, like every grain of sand or every snowflake. And it's focusing on that uniqueness and seeing what we have to offer on our own, which is, which also helps to keep the motivation going, or, the practice continuing. But definitely it's all a practice. Making
Yes. Yes. I'm sensing into the common human impulse to compare, which of course is ego trying to protect itself, and we can psychologize it and pathologize it, and that's not all that useful. And Martha's poem, her writing about staying open to allow the channel, I often with clients will use a metaphor as, are you looking in the rearview mirror, or are you looking out the front windshield?
Right.
Because you cannot do anything more about what's in the rearview mirror. It's in you. It doesn't go away, but you can choose your relationship to it. So when you look out the front windshield, and now what?
Absolutely.
As you said, when your bones hurt, smile. It doesn't hurt as much. That's a front windshield view. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you feel the tension interiorly of something calling you forward to design, this is what presence is all about. Can I open the aperture of my camera lens and take in more of what's in front of me and let it activate or stimulate me in some way? Right. What's the causal agent for you that you say, oh, I'm gonna lean into this and see what wants to be expressed?
Right. Sometimes before I jump into something, it feels like I often have to take a retreat also, just to clarify my mind, because I may be excited about a new project and things happening. Just before, there was someone who wanted me to share the name about the letter that I just read, and it's Martha Graham's letter to Agnes de Mille. I saw this in the chat, but I have this kind of pattern which is almost like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And initially I questioned whether a retreat is a bad thing. Am I running away from something? But what I've realized is that retreat helps to clarify things for me in a magical manner at times, where I then take 2 steps forward for sure, or 2 giant leaps. And those kinds of giving myself the time and the space to absorb what, get inspired, has been so incredible. I mean, I was in the animation industry for 4 years after I moved from India to Canada, and I designed animated shows for children for TV. But I realized I couldn't do that. I mean, because the industry wasn't something that I wanted to be in. I needed to pursue my passions as an artist. And it was terrifying. It was really terrifying. But at that moment, I decided to take a train up north to the northernmost point in Ontario. And I camped alone for a week on an island on the Moose River in Moosonee, and it was called Tidewater Provincial Park. And this river opened up to the James Bay and the Hudson Bay. And during the course of the week, I was pretty much alone on that island. And on the 4th day, I saw the Northern Lights for the first time. And that was the day I also encountered the Moose Cree people, the indigenous people. Right. They happened to be coming by a boat. And they stopped and said hello. They came up to my campsite, took me for a boat ride, showed me their cabin, and, smoking tents. And it was so lovely. And what they said was, when you see the Northern Lights, as a myth that if you whistle to it, it'll come closer to you. And sure enough, after they left at sunset, I had a very powerful experience there where I got my fire going, and then suddenly there were fierce winds, and I looked up and black clouds were approaching. My fire was spiraling out of proportion, and it started to pour. And I didn't have the heart to just put out the fire, climb into my tent. So I sat under the pine tree with moss at the bottom and began to meditate, because this was a time where I didn't have a cell phone. I was far away. There was no connection. I was my family and friends under the tree. And the tree was a perfect spiraling umbrella. which kept me dry. And when I opened my eyes finally, I don't know how long that was, I stretched and I looked out at the river, and there were stars, shooting stars, and the northern lights. And I freaked. And that was when at one point I whistled, and it was a spiral above my head. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to go to bed now. But it was that time which was, I gave myself time to, I allowed myself some time to reflect and take a retreat. And it made things so much easier. It clarified things. It removed clutter in my head and allowed for me to move ahead in a manner that felt easy. Whereas before it was, way more constricted, it felt like. So, I mean, that was in 2002. So since then, there has really been a lot of, I would say, a growth and of trust and of faith. Because every time I feel like, oh my gosh, how am I going to, pay my mortgage, or how am I going to make this journey back to India when it's starting to get cold? And I was like, you know what? It's worked out all these years, and why wouldn't it not work out now? And sure enough, having that faith and trusting the universe for things to happen has made things happen.
It's such a classic tension you're talking about, right? All of us in every professional field think that when we're down in the weeds and we're not attending to our own physical, emotional, mental, spiritual vitality, that pushing harder, willing our way through something will yield the best results, when in fact, it's the opposite. It's that ability to notice in the moment, boy, are we attached? And go to what Brahm calls the mindlessness. I can't say that word, mindlessness. There we go. And so you see the wonder, the spontaneity that life presents to us because we slow down enough to see it. Yes. And then you allowed yourself to be restored by taking the risk to simply be with it, right? Sitting under the tree rather than getting in your tent because you're worried about getting wet. And then the magic happens, and it happens in the slowing down, which is the same thing we do as coaches, right? We help a client hit the pause button on their day-to-day life. And for that time that we're with them, they're able to explore something they don't give themselves permission for any other place, and open again, right? And open again, just as you're describing. And whether you're whistling for the Aurora Borealis or seeing where the next gig is that pays the rent, they will emerge if we'll slow down enough to see it.
Yes. And also this touches upon something we had discussed earlier, where the self and the relationship of the self with your immediate society and with the greater workings of the universe. Because I also realized, at times I have to be selfish in order to be selfless.
Yes.
Myself first in order to be helpful in a way, because it's no use me trying to help someone who's not receiving it also, because it's so necessary to be there at the right time when there's a receiving and giving that's happening. So, and I realize, sometimes I'm not capable of giving simply because I haven't given the time for myself to take care of myself, whatever, energetically, physically, mentally, in all these ways. And so that's important for sure.
So I'm wondering about the idea of reciprocity and how you see that show up in your work.
Wow, yeah. It's been huge because, as I mentioned, like, diving off the deep end to live off of my art was terrifying, was so crazy. But I realized, I think after 10 years of me doing it, from 2004 to 2014, I kind of put my blinkers on and I focused on my work and I would put it out there. And by sharing, it didn't mean like just giving your art, but it was also, I have sketchbooks and my writings and my introspective moments and reflections and drawings. And I realized it's no use me keeping these under my bed or no one can see them, right? So 2006, I started a blog and put up pages of my sketchbooks, of my doodles, of my drawings, of my ramblings, whatever, the madness in my head. And not having feedback. At that time, there wasn't like Google Analytics, or when it first started, I wouldn't know what kind of, you're not getting immediate feedback, right? But I realized it was sharing the work with a wider audience. Mm-hmm. And inevitably, things would come back. Like, I would volunteer. I volunteered for a literacy organization called World Literacy Canada, or at a homeless shelter in downtown Toronto. And then the literacy organization was based in Toronto, and they had an office in India, in Varanasi, where they would do literacy programs for women and children in the grassroots level in villages surrounding Varanasi. And they would raise money in Canada for literacy programs in India. And so I started volunteering by doing posters, artworks, whatever they needed for their fundraising events. And before you knew it, they were like, Prash, they asked me, Prash, do you want to go to volunteer at a place in Varanasi? I mean, we'll fly you there. I mean, take care of your stay. And so, like the acts of kindness and generosity and things that I actually needed. I needed to get away for the winter, and happened for 3 months the first time. And then I got a youth internship to go for 6 months. And over the course, I would say, after 10 years, I realized there was such a audience, and I was getting feedback where when I was in Canada, I was doing work for people in India. While I was in India, I was doing work for Canada and everywhere else. Like right now, I'm illustrating these Sufi children's books by Sufi author for clients in London. And so suddenly it just kind of opened up things globally, where there was a global audience and people were asking me to do work. And it was by, I would say, giving and sharing my work, not knowing what was coming back, but things would come back in magnificent ways, in so much abundance that, I'm so grateful. I feel really fortunate, really lucky, really blessed to be doing what I love to do. So, yeah.
And so you put your life force out there, your love force, we might say, into the field, and that energy reflected back to you and invited you again. And so you contribute again, and we can see the infinity symbol moving here, right? So that's that principle of reciprocity. And yet you've brought something back from earlier in our conversation around faith and trust. And I noticed this in our field, that many practitioners have crisis is too strong a word, but we have a moment when we think to ourselves, are we really making any difference? Are we really contributing in some way that's meaningful? Or perhaps feeling those moments in the flow when we're supposed to be standing still, but we keep trying to push it, and right. Nobody's saying yes to us. So those are moments to get present with ourselves and say, where am I not in flow? How do I put myself into flow? And I wonder, when you've had doubt, when you've been in a place where you couldn't tap your own trust, what were your ways to get back into your own chi?
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, this happens, of course this happens, and it happens to everyone. And, but I think one of the things I say every day, I mean, it's a prayer, the simple prayer, which I love. And in my morning's meditation, which is, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is sorrow, joy. So these are the things, I mean, and we're talking about these dichotomies, and how do you maintain the balance between it? And, but the one thing is focusing on the positive aspect of it rather than dwelling in the negative. So, where there is darkness, let me bring light. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. And, these are things I think it's become a necessary aspect to remind myself.
Yes.
And also like the letter to Agnes de Mille, I mean, we are our worst critics. I mean, we can, all of us, I mean, it's human nature where we can just kind of, bang ourselves down. But at one point you have to just like zip it and shut the monkey, right? Or tell the monkey to shut up, because it's like, you have to take that step in order to focus on the light or focus on the positive aspects of things. And I think that has made a huge difference for me, because there's no use worrying, right? I mean, of course, we can get caught up and get into that spiral vortex of which can suck you down. And we probably have all hit rock bottom at some point of time too. But then what? Then you're going to start rising.
And that's what happens all the time, right? That no matter what wall we hit or what well we find ourselves at the bottom of, life always says, I'm still flowing, and we step into it. And, we're speaking in metaphor here, Prash, a little bit, and I can see that some of our panelists, some of our participants are wondering, how is this applicable to coaching? So I'm going to pause for just a second. And, one of the things that every one of us, in whatever our professional endeavor is, and you're speaking to it so beautifully in terms of being an expressive artist, I'll say it that way. You do so many things. I don't want to limit you. But we are the instrument of our work. And so much of the attention a professional gives is to the technical. And that's not our conversation today. And it's uncomfortable to talk about things that are not as tangible as our hands or the tools we put in our hands, right? It's uncomfortable to be in the place of exploring, where do I hold myself back from being in the fullest expression of my potential? Where do I tell myself stories about what's going on and keep myself out of the flow that's possible with a particular client? And these are the things you and I are talking about here, which is that we must give as much credence, as much value to attending to ourself and the expression of ourself with full freedom as we do to our technical capacity, if we're to be useful to our customers. And this is a really important principle, I think, for a professional to realize. You have to put yourself in the place of best potential. Well, to do that, you need to be in your own best potential. And that's what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Because for me, very often I get clients asking me to do an illustration or a book cover in some kind of a realistic manner. And I'm like, you're approaching me, I mean, because I don't know who you are. So clearly you've seen my work, and none of my work is realistic. It's way more whimsical, watercolor, loose lines, whatever, right? So it's that point I go, I'm not the right person to do this, So also the act of saying no has helped me focus on what I really want to do and develop my work in a way that this is what I want to pursue in my work. And people come to me for that very reason, because then I have evolved and spent enough time focusing on what I really want to do. And this is what, the children's book that I illustrate or the murals that I paint are of a particular style. And I'm not trying to replicate someone else's. It's giving myself an opportunity to focus and to say no to things that I know I won't do justice to, right? I mean, I wouldn't be able to, simply because I'm not capable. I'm not that, great in doing a fabulous photorealistic painting. No, I'm way more whimsical. So knowing that and knowing how to deal with a client in that manner, and by saying no, I wouldn't be the right person, whereas I feel another illustrator would do more justice to the text that's been written for this book, or, I'm just giving examples, would help them understand. And then they reply and say, yes, you're absolutely right. They understand that it's not about the money. It's not, because I could probably do the job just for money, but it's not going to give me the satisfaction that doing something that I would actually enjoy.
That's the outside in. rather than the inside out. And, you know, you're also speaking to this. Actually, when I'm teaching ethics with coaches, we talk quite a bit about what are your criteria for saying yes and for saying no. And the reason I cast that in an ethics conversation is because we can lose ourselves in the interest of commerce and say yes to everything because we have a scarcity mindset rather than an abundance mindset that says, when I'm standing in my full authentic self, I will attract exactly the people who are meant to be with me because our resonance is going to cause something else to emerge. Yeah. And that takes that trust and faith we're talking about. And yet we can also know when we say yes to something we shouldn't say yes to. We know it in our bones and our gut instinct, right? And yet we do it anyway until it becomes so depleting that we find a state of confusion emerges, right?
Yes. But also, you know, I want to point out there's someone who's been watching us and listening to us who said how much gratitude also pays. And thank you for that, because my goodness, I mean, by saying, you know, I feel blessed and lucky and fortunate to do what I love to do, I'm so grateful for the fact. And I think because there are basic things, you know, clothes on our body, roof over our head, food in our belly. And then you realize, oh my gosh, I mean, this is lots to be thankful for. And then you have friends and a drink and, you know, beautiful spaces to look at. And I mean, the things just pile up and you're like, wow, there is so much. I mean, in fact, I can see or write or talk. And, you know, these are things that we take for granted a lot. And what helps me remind myself when I take things for granted, travel has been very good, you know, because it puts things in objectivity at times, because it removes myself from a comfortable position, puts me somewhere so I can reflect on what I've just seen, and then again vice versa. And I feel that, you know, that really helps with that, and yeah, just being grateful for what's going on.
So the broadening of one's perspective, so useful. And you know, there's wonderful Eastern teachings about attachment and the impact of attachment. And it strikes me that you're working in the world of whimsy and wonder, and how we have undervalued that. And yet what people find so compelling about your work is how it transports them to an experience in a moment of their lives that they didn't think was available. And again, I think this is the parallel to coaching, that clients get really, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost adamant that this is my life and this is how it's going to be, and I'm going to plan out every step of it. And they lose the beauty of spontaneity.
Yeah.
And so it's like what they do to the horses on the racetrack, and then they put the blinders on so they can't see the other horses. So all they're doing is straight ahead, and yet the meandering road is so much more pleasant.
Yeah. True.
So I'm wondering what curiosity you have about coaching. You know, I shared the competency with you, and you and I've been going down this meandering road to find the parallels in the two professional endeavors of art and coaching. Although one might argue coaching has an art to it. And I'm wondering, what's your experience right now of us simply being in this discovery exploration together?
Well, Janet, you know, I've been lucky enough to be involved in teaching. I mean, from an earlier age, I would do workshops for children. You know, I got into children's programming through animation, and I love it. And that's led me to illustrate children's books. Like, I'm working on my 10th or 11th children's book right now. But in the process, done workshops with kids, been involved with friends who have alternative education schools in India. And so I've ended up doing like book binding workshops or flip book workshops or, you know, all sorts of things. And then that I would do workshops and presentations at animation schools in Canada, or on visual journal keeping to students like in the States and universities. And then that's led me now to every year my design school that I studied in, the National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad, invites me to be visiting faculty every year. And I love it. I enjoy it because for me, it's, again, I am an eternal student. So I really, I mean, I don't know anything, but I go there to learn, and I'm learning just as much from, this year started off in January with me doing visual journal keeping workshops with grades 7, 8, and 9 in a Waldorf school in Hyderabad.
Oh, fabulous.
Fast, yeah. Like, I mean, we had so much fun, and seeing what the kids were doing and continuing. I still get pages, from this, which sent to me, which they didn't have before. Feeds my understanding of things, teaches me so much. And likewise, 4 years ago, a friend from New York, Danny Gregory, a fellow watercolor sketchbook keeper, invited me to be faculty on an online sketchbook school.
Mm.
And that just, he and a friend Coacharya in Amsterdam set up an online sketchbook school called Sketchbook School. And that just opened up an audience globally for people who do what we do. And, I've been doing this for 25, 30 years, not really knowing, I wonder how many people, actually have a sketchbook at all times.
Do you think you were all alone keeping your sketchbook under your bed? I don't think so.
Yeah, no, but it's so lovely to be able to share and partake, and also I wouldn't say, I think experience has helped so much so that I am invited to give talks. And I mean, if you're asking about coaching in this manner, answer questions in a way, I'm not sure how much I actually have to impart, but it is fun because this year is the world's first SketchCon that I've been invited to, the Sketchbook Conference in Pasadena, California in November. And I have to give 2 talks, one on the art of sketchbook memoir, and the other one is, I said I'm going to do one sketchbook as healing. And yeah, and I'm excited about it because I feel like by sharing these kinds of things, people are attracted to ask, questions. And I feel like, I love to share. I would love to share whatever I've learned. And most recently I've just been talking about, drawing as healing. And I posted an image on Instagram, and somebody, they message me and say, Prash, like I've been suffering from, I have my family suffers from mental illness and depression and this and that. And I can't tell you how much drawing actually helps me and healing. And so I can't talk about this publicly, but thank you for sharing this, right? And then you realize, wow, you really don't know how many people you're touching. Really, but then you do get feedback. And in this day and age, wow, with technology the way it is.
So here's another tension of presence.
Yeah.
We never know who we're impacting. And we can get so caught up in our own sense of, oh, well, nobody will care about this. Everybody's already done this idea. And so we don't actually allow our voice, our art, our presence, whatever it might be, we don't allow it to show up someplace. And we're missing the opportunity to have a profound impact in someone's life, and we may never know it. So stop being attached to whether or not we're making a difference. We are by being a human being.
And our own unique individual selves.
Yes.
We have our own voice, and that voice, irrespective of who you are, has to come out. It has to be shared. It has to be released. And as Martha Graham says, it's not you to criticize it and say whether that's good or bad or how valuable it is or whether we can make a difference to others. No, you don't know. We don't know what an impact it's going to have. And it's really important to put it out there. Put it out there. There it is.
So in a coaching interaction, right, one of the things that is the most artful competence of a coach in presence is trusting, not knowing.
Yes.
Not knowing where the conversation is going, not knowing what's inside the client, not knowing what's inside of us as the practitioner, allowing the field that we're co-creating with that client to be pregnant with something that is a new, originated, unknown, and only belongs in that moment and only accessible because we've fully allowed ourselves to merge into the flow of that.
Absolutely. That's why I enjoy teaching so much. I mean, because I walk into class and I'm like, I don't know. And then I go, okay, start scribbling. I start scribbling on the board, and then things emerge. And I'm like, you know what? Too tight today. I mean, it's amazing how things just come out from.
Okay, true confessions, Prash. I have to ask you a question.
Yeah.
When in your career did you stop preparing to deliver a class?
Oh,
you're busted. I know you did it.
Because I still feel like I need to prepare, but there's times when I'm like, I'm yeah, exactly. I don't know. I really don't know. But I've begun to be a little bit more trusting of the fact that I need to be open to see and the fact is, acknowledge that I don't know anything. Like when, I can walk in the class and I say, I'm sorry guys, I don't know the answers to the questions you're asking or what we're actually doing, but have fun in the process. We may as well have fun. And oh my gosh, that's just it opens up so much, because I mean, so that's been more recent in me kind of trusting the fact that, wow, because clearly I don't know. I mean, I know that I don't know, and that helps.
So that's really the staging, right? So we're still in this trust theme here that we're talking about. How do we have self-trust, which allows us to trust a partnership or any environment where we're with another? How do we trust that what will emerge will serve? And I think that there's this place of expectation. Maybe that's the right word. That because we're in such a maybe a well-regarded, well-renowned artist that you are, people have an expectation that that's something they're going to get from you. I find this all the time in my coaching practice. I get referred in to work with a new client and they're going to get something because I've had previous experience. When really all the previous experience does is give me self-trust to show up, to be here in this moment, because this will be unique with this client. And it's the same in the course room, right? So while I have technique and I can trust that, I don't do a lot of preparing, because what will be most meaningful for this audience will be, who are they? What's brought them here? What is it they're seeking? What is it they want to tap inside themselves? How will we create an experience for them that will bring that to life? That has to come from in them. Nobody can make us do anything if we haven't found their own internal motivation.
And the realization that, I go back every year to design school to teach this one particular course, but every year the students are different, and every year the course is put, the concepts are the same, but the way it's put is completely different. So what I've learned is, even though I may know the essence or the basic ideas of this course structure, the way it kind of happens organically with the students and is completely different every time. So or even with the way I illustrate children's books, I think I think I have an idea of how, I'm going to go about illustrating the book and the time frame. And when I get the book, every single book has been different. Out the preconceived notions I've had and start it's a whole new universe. And I think being open to that has really helped.
Yeah. I wonder if you have a sense for how that developed in you. I remember having a conversation with Ram a couple of years back about reflection. And I realized that that's not something we ever teach. We don't teach people how to reflect. Somehow it enters their lives that it's important to pause every now and then and collect ourselves. That's that act of looking within and saying what matters, what's moving me right now, what am I activated by, what am I celebrating and grateful for, and where might I have doubt? What's that about? Right? That's that reflection process. And I wonder, how do we learn how to be learners with ourselves? And it seems to me as an artist that it has that potential to be heavy for you, and yet you don't carry it that way. I wonder what you know about that, learning about being a learner with yourself.
Yeah, because I feel like, I suppose all artists, writers, everyone would go through a period of stagnancy, but I feel like for me, I have three words which are important: passion, being passionate about something, which really steers the direction in which I need to go. That's huge for me. And the next is practice. I've got to do it every day. And if I don't do it, then I will get rusty, much like any other thing, if I stop doing it. And the third thing is perseverance. When I don't feel like doing it, I still have to do it, because if I write 5 pages of gibberish, maybe 2 lines may be good. And in that process of practice and having that kind of ritual, I think the level of introspection, for me, thanks to my sketchbook, I feel like, this is one medium which has transformed my life. And I feel like it's the closest art form, the purest, I would say, because it literally is the direct outpourings of myself, has been a very reflective activity. So, as
I'm going to add another P to your litany here: passion, practice, perseverance, and participation. You participate in your life.
To party is to participate. So that is it. So if you're partying, you are participating, and that's it. Because if you're not having a good time, you're definitely not participating. And you're absolutely right about that. Yeah, for sure. One must participate. But coming back to the reflection aspect, I think it's been part of me, part of the processing of what I'm going through. The assimilation part, taken a lot of influences, ideas, stimuli, but then the digestion or the assimilation is the reflection and the time for me to process it and see, that's working, this is not working. How could I improve? How could I do things better? How could I learn more? What could I do things differently? And then the end product for me, once it's done, it's done. Like, it doesn't, which is the journey is the destination, right? It's like,
your answer there answers the question that Mani just posed, which, how does the coach practice when there isn't a client for a day? And for me, that's what I do. I spend time reflecting on the clients that I've worked with during the week and harvesting the things that were really special. Where were the moments when my heart just cracked wide open in the experience I was having with the client, and who was I being when that happened, so that I can grab it and take it in and repeat it the next time. And
true. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, welcome back, Ram.
Hello.
Oh, he looks a little frozen, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I mugged that.
Maybe he's actually frozen, but I believe he was trying to come on to perhaps bring the conversation to conclusion, unfortunately, because it's been absolutely amazing. I can just, even through the comments, I can feel everyone's smiles on their faces.
Oh, good.
Just watching the two of you engage. It's, it's been very uplifting and inspirational, I must say.
It's gone by really quickly, as you did say.
We can do part 2 whenever the two of you are keen to do it. Maybe different locations in the world next time.
Exactly. I want to come to Goa. Although maybe I'll see you in Powell River this summer. We're headed up to Cortez in August, so let me know.
Awesome. Yeah, I should be there September. Yeah, amazing. Definitely.
Well, Ram is frozen. Any closing words from either of you before we finish up?
Well, thank you. I'm seeing a lot of thank yous from people here. And I must say it's been absolute joy. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Magda, Ram, everyone for facilitating this. And thank you to everyone who's been participating. It's been lovely. Yeah, been fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, my heart is very, very filled. Thank you so much,
Oh, that's
Ram
wonderful.
and Magda, for hosting. And Prash, your joy in the world is so contagious and igniting. And yeah, I sleep better at night knowing you're in the world, bringing your gifts forward. So thanks for the privilege to be with you today.
Lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, big thumbs up to that one. I agree. I think when I post the recording of this particular session, I will copy and paste the chat as well, because it has been the most optimistic chat filled with some great links for additional exploration and reflection for everyone.
I'd be able to go through the chat too, yeah, because I didn't have time to look at everything.
Yeah, Prash, I will send you a transcript. So in case you want to address anything else via recorded video or in a blog post or something, we're very happy to post additional thoughts from you or from Janet on the blog post next week when we get the recording out. But in the meantime, to those of you who are still around, do please scroll up or just look for Prash on Instagram. I personally love following his Instagram because it's a beautiful mixture of the kinds of things and thoughts you've heard here, but also his beautiful artwork and photos from his travels and stories of people that he encounters and students that he encounters. So if you want more of Prash, there's a daily dose on Instagram. I highly encourage you to go and do that. But yeah, thank you so much. I'm very sorry to wrap this up. We are back here tomorrow again with two very different sessions. We have Marshall Goldsmith, who will be speaking at 9 a.m. Eastern, and Caitlin Ryman, who will be speaking about change at 10:15 Eastern time. So the schedule, as always, is on our website, and we hope to see all of you there, plus a few friends. Thank you so much for today. It was really a joy.
Fabulous. Bye, everybody.
Have a great day, everyone.
Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Be well.